I think I didn't do anything wrong, just wanted to teach him a playful lesson. It was supposed to be a joke, a harmless laugh on a long drive home. But when I turned the car around to pick him up, his car was gone, and no one has seen him since that night. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. We'd been driving back from a co-worker's party on a half-empty stretch of highway, the kind of quiet road that made me restless. Miles was at the wheel as usual, eyes steady, mouth set in that blank line that passed for focus. He'd been silent for almost 20 minutes. I stared out the window, bored, watching the passing lights blur together. "You're awfully talkative tonight," I said, half teasing, half irritated. He didn't look away from the road. "I'm tired, Clara." I sighed. "You're always tired. You'd think I dragged you to war, not a dinner." He smiled faintly, not enough to count as real amusement. "You didn't drag me. I wanted to go." "Sure you did," I muttered. It came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take it back. That's when the idea popped into my head, stupid, spontaneous, the kind of thing I used to do before we got married, and everything became a routine of politeness. I thought maybe it would make him laugh, loosen him up, a little shock to the system. I said, "You know what? If you're going to keep acting like a zombie, I should just drop you right here." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Pull over," I said. "I'll drive. You can walk it off." He looked confused. "We're in the middle of nowhere." "That's the point. You need air." He sighed again, the way he always did when he thought I was joking but hoped I'd let it go. That sigh annoyed me more than anything. I reached for the gear shift. "Fine, I'll pull over myself." He grabbed my hand lightly. "Clara, don't." "Relax," I said, laughing. "I'm not abandoning you. It's just a prank." I eased the car onto the shoulder and stopped. The night was quiet, except for the soft hum of insects and the occasional whoosh of distant cars. I smiled at him, expecting him to roll his eyes and smile back. Instead, he looked tired. Really tired. "You can't keep turning everything into a game," he said quietly. "Come on, Miles, it's just for fun. Get out, stretch, and when I circle back, maybe you'll have a pulse again." He didn't move. I leaned over and opened his door. "Out," I said playfully. "Doctor's orders." He hesitated, then unbuckled and stepped out. I waited until he closed the door, then rolled down the window. "Don't look so serious. I'll be right back. Maybe I'll even honk to make it official." He gave a small shake of his head, hands in his pockets. "You're unbelievable sometimes." I grinned. "You love it." Then I hit the gas. I drove off laughing, the sound bouncing around the empty car. I checked the rearview mirror and saw him standing there by the roadside, small under the pale wash of headlights. For a moment, it felt satisfying, the kind of harmless mischief we'd laugh about later. I imagined picking him up 5 minutes later, both of us joking about how dramatic I was. I drove for a little under a mile before turning around. It felt like long enough to make the joke land. When I came back to the spot, I slowed down, headlights sweeping across the shoulder, but he wasn't there. I frowned, pulled over again, and stepped out. The night air was cooler now, sharp against my skin. "Miles?" I called out, half laughing. "Okay, funny. You got me. Where are you?" No answer. Just crickets and the low hum of wind through the grass. I walked a few meters down the road, checked behind a cluster of trees. Nothing. My laughter faded. Maybe he was getting me back, trying to scare me. That would be new for him, but it would fit. I smiled again, forcing the amusement back. "Very funny. You're learning." Still nothing. Then I thought maybe he'd started walking. I got back in the car, headlights cutting through the dark, and drove slowly forward, scanning the shoulder for his shape. After a minute or two, the road widened near a rest area where we'd parked his car earlier that night, before heading to the party together. Maybe he'd walked back there? Except when I pulled in, his car wasn't there. The space where we'd left it was empty. At first, I assumed I'd parked in the wrong place. I looped the lot twice. No car. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No texts. I dialed his number, expecting to see the glow of his phone somewhere nearby, but it rang twice, then went to voicemail. My stomach tightened. I waited another 5 minutes, then turned off the engine. Maybe he'd gotten a ride from someone, though who would be out here at midnight on a Sunday? I called again. Voicemail. I texted, "Very funny. Come out now." Then, "I'm serious. This isn't cute anymore." Nothing. Headlights appeared behind me then, a police cruiser slowing down. My pulse jumped, a mix of embarrassment and relief. Maybe they'd seen him walking and could tell me which direction he went. The officer rolled down his window. "Evening, ma'am. Everything all right?" I smiled too brightly. "Yes, fine. Just waiting for my husband. We had a small argument." He tilted his head. "Is your husband the man who left the vehicle here earlier tonight?" "What do you mean?" He nodded toward the empty lot. "A few drivers reported a silver sedan parked here for a couple of hours. Said a man was standing nearby before it disappeared." I stared at him, words failing. "Disappeared?" He shrugged. "Gone when we came back through. Do you know where he might have gone?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The night air felt thicker suddenly, pressing against my chest. The officer waited patiently, pen poised over his notebook. I managed to whisper, "He was just here." The officer's brow furrowed. "Ma'am, maybe you should come with us to file a report." I nodded numbly. My hands were shaking as I got back into my car. The prank was supposed to make him laugh. Now the space beside me felt too empty to bear. And somewhere out there, on that long stretch of road, Miles was gone. At the station, the fluorescent lights made everything too sharp. The clock on the wall ticked like a metronome for my guilt. I sat on a hard plastic chair, twisting my wedding ring as the officer, Sergeant Reeves, filled out forms. "So, Mrs. Dane," he said, "let's go over this again. You and your husband were driving from a party?" "Yes," I said quickly. He was quiet and I was trying to lighten the mood. He looked up. "By leaving him on the side of the road?" "It was supposed to be funny," I said, my voice shaking. "I only drove off for a minute. When I came back, he was gone." The sergeant nodded slowly, expression unreadable. "You said he had his phone?" "Yes." "And his car?" "No, that was parked at the rest stop a few miles back." He wrote something down. "Except that car isn't there anymore." I hesitated. "You're sure?" He gave a short nod. "We sent a patrol to check. The lot was empty. We'll review the cameras from nearby gas stations." He paused, then added, "When was the last time you saw him for sure?" "Standing by the road," I said. He looked annoyed, maybe tired. "And you didn't see anyone else?" "No one." He leaned back. "All right. We'll start a missing person report." The words hit me harder than I expected. Missing person. I almost laughed because it sounded so dramatic. But when I saw his serious face, the laugh died in my throat. By morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Miles's brother, Martin, had called twice. I hadn't answered yet. I didn't know what to say. That I'd left Miles in the dark for a joke, and now he'd vanished? When I finally called him back, his voice was sharp. "Where is he?" "If I knew that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now," I said. He exhaled hard. "The police called me. They said you were the last person to see him." "That's because I am his wife," I snapped, then instantly regretted it. There was a pause. "Mom's on her way to town," he said. "Don't talk to reporters. They're already posting about it online." "Reporters?" "Yeah. Someone shared the police notice on Facebook. Your name's already there." I hung up and opened my phone. He was right. There it was. Man missing after late-night argument with wife. My photo, our photo, one from our wedding day. I stared at it until the edges blurred. By the afternoon, 2 detectives came by my house. They asked if they could look around. I agreed. What else could I do? They were polite but distant. Every question felt like an accusation wrapped in courtesy. Were there any recent arguments? One of them asked. Nothing serious, I said. He raised an eyebrow. His co-worker mentioned something about tension lately. I forced a smile. We've both been stressed. It's normal. They nodded, but I saw the quick glance they exchanged. They didn't believe me. That evening, I called Clara, my co-worker, hoping she'd calm me down. You'll never believe this, I said. Miles is missing. She gasped. Clara, what do you mean missing? I played a prank, I said, my voice dropping. I drove off and, when I went back, he wasn't there. Silence. Then, you did what? It was supposed to be funny, I insisted. He wasn't laughing, but I didn't think. Clara, she interrupted, that's not a prank. That's cruel. Don't say that, I snapped. You know me. I would never hurt him. I know, she said softly. But this is bad. You need to tell them everything. I already did. Did you tell them why you were fighting? I hesitated. We weren't fighting. He was just quiet. Clara sighed. Clara, people don't vanish from jokes. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing there, hands in his pockets, his face lit by the car's red taillights. He'd said something before I drove off. Something small. You always take things too far. At the time, I'd laughed. Now it echoed in my head like a warning. The next morning, the police called. They'd found his phone at a gas station 15 miles from where I'd left him. I asked if they found him too. The sergeant said no. Just the phone, lying near a vending machine. Any sign of his car? I asked. Not yet, but we're checking cameras. By noon, Nancy, my mother-in-law, was at my door. She didn't bother knocking. What did you do to him? She demanded. I stepped back, startled. I didn't do anything. It was a joke. Her eyes were red. A joke? You left him on the highway, Clara. My son's missing, and you think it's a joke? Tears stung my eyes. I didn't think he'd actually go anywhere. I went back right away. She shook her head slowly. He trusted you. You've been humiliating him for years, and this time he finally had enough. I opened my mouth, but she turned and walked out, slamming the door. By that evening, the story was on the local news. They used the same wedding photo, smiling, happy, untouched by the life that came later. A reporter stood by the rest stop saying, authorities believe foul play is not suspected at this time, but the wife's account raises questions. I sat in the dark, watching my own name scroll across the screen. Then, just before midnight, my phone buzzed again. It was Sergeant Reeves. We've reviewed some footage, he said. Your husband was seen walking along the service road about 20 minutes after you left. Another vehicle stopped near him briefly, then pulled away. My heart pounded. Did you see who it was? Not yet, but we're working on it. Stay by your phone, Mrs. Dane. When he hung up, I just sat there staring at the blank wall. I told myself he'd just accepted a ride, that he'd come back once he cooled down. But a small, sharp thought kept pushing through the noise. What if he wasn't coming back at all? By the third day, the story had taken on a life of its own. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from strangers, co-workers, old acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. Some said they were praying for me. Others called me heartless. I turned off notifications, but the noise in my head didn't stop. At work, people tried to act normal, though I could feel the weight of their curiosity. Conversations would go quiet when I entered the break room. One morning, my boss called me into his office. Clara, he said gently, maybe take a few days off, just until things calm down. I can work, I said quickly. Keeping busy helps. He gave me a look that said it wasn't up for debate. This isn't a punishment, it's just everyone's a little tense. When I left his office, Dylan was leaning against the wall near my desk. He smiled, that same lazy grin I used to fall for years ago. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I'm fine." He lowered his voice. "You know how people are. They'll twist everything. They already think—" I cut him off. "I know what they think." He hesitated, then said, "Maybe he just needed space. You said yourself he was miserable lately. Maybe he finally took a chance to get out." I frowned. "Don't say that. I'm just saying, if he wanted to disappear, this is how he'd do it. No trace, no explanation. That's not on you." His tone was meant to comfort me, but it left a bitter taste. I didn't want to imagine Miles as someone capable of vanishing just to prove a point. That made him cruel, and he wasn't cruel, at least not before me. When I got home that evening, a black SUV was parked outside. 2 detectives were waiting. I let them in, offering coffee I knew they'd decline. Detective Laird, the younger one, flipped open his notebook. "Mrs. Dane, we'd like to ask a few clarifying questions about the night your husband disappeared." "I've already told you everything," I said. "I know," he replied, "but some details aren't adding up." He pulled out printed pages, screenshots of text messages. My stomach dropped. "These were deleted from your phone," he said. "We recovered them from the cloud." My eyes flicked across the lines. Messages from me to Miles. "You're impossible to talk to. Maybe I need someone who actually listens. Don't act like you're the victim." I felt heat crawl up my neck. "Those were just arguments," I said quickly. "Everyone says things they don't mean." The older detective, Keene, spoke up. "There's also one from the afternoon before the party. If you keep ignoring me, I'll make you regret it." "That was sarcasm," I said, almost shouting. He'd been silent for days. Keene didn't react. "You understand how this looks?" I wanted to say something clever, something to make them see how ridiculous this was, but the words stuck. Finally, I said, "I didn't hurt him. I swear." Laird nodded, closing his notebook. "We're not accusing you, Mrs. Dane, but you should know. Public interest in this case is growing. If you have anything else to share, now's the time." After they left, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the phone. I wanted to call Clara, but I already knew what she'd say. She'd tell me I was spiraling, that I needed to tell the truth about how long I'd driven before circling back. Because the truth was, I hadn't turned around after 1 mile like I told the police. I'd gone farther. I'd been angrier than I admitted, driving fast, music loud, muttering about how ungrateful Miles was. It had been at least 15 minutes before I realized what I'd done. The guilt came late, slow and suffocating. That night, I scrolled through social media until I found Nancy's interview on the local news page. She stood in front of her house, tearful and deliberate. "My son was a good man," she said. "He deserved kindness, not humiliation." The reporter asked if she thought I had something to do with it. Nancy didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. "Clara has a temper," she said softly, "and Miles always tried to keep her happy. Maybe he just couldn't anymore." I slammed my laptop shut. The next morning, Clara called. Her voice was tight. "Clara, did you lie to the police about when you turned around?" I swallowed. "Why are you asking me that?" "Because a friend of mine saw your car on the highway that night. She said it was closer to 1:30, not midnight. She remembers because she was driving home from her shift." I said nothing. "Clara," she continued, "they'll find out. Just tell them the truth before it gets worse." "It doesn't matter," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "He's still gone either way." Clara sighed. "I'm sorry. I can't get involved anymore." The line went dead. Later that afternoon, Detective Laird called again. "We've located your husband's vehicle," he said. I froze. Where? In an industrial lot near Riverside. Locked, undisturbed. Was there anything inside? He hesitated. We'll know more once we process it. I gripped the edge of the counter. He must have driven there himself. That's one possibility, he said. But there's something you should know. The registration sticker expired 6 months ago. He wouldn't have gotten far without being stopped. My heart pounded. So someone else drove it? We'll see. When he hung up, I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at the quiet hum of the refrigerator. The house felt smaller by the hour, the walls closing in with every unanswered question. I opened a window, just to breathe. Outside, the sun was setting behind the trees, the same orange glow that had lit the road the night I left him. For the first time, I let myself whisper the thought I'd been avoiding since all this began. Maybe Miles didn't vanish at all. Maybe he walked away, finally calling my bluff, the one I never thought he'd have the nerve to win. The industrial lot was quiet when I arrived with the detectives. A chain-link fence surrounded the area, the kind of place used for long-forgotten trucks and broken machinery. The evening light made everything look orange and hollow. Miles's silver sedan sat near the back, half covered in dust, like it had been parked there for weeks instead of days. Detective Keene gestured for me to stay back while the forensic team worked. We'll let you know when you can look inside, he said. I nodded, arms crossed tight. They popped the door open with gloves, careful and slow. I caught a glimpse of the dashboard, clean, untouched. No fingerprints but his and mine, they said later. No sign of a struggle, no sign of anyone else. I stood by the fence, hugging myself against the chill. This doesn't make sense, I said quietly. If he wanted to disappear, why would he leave his car? Detective Laird jotted something in his notebook. Maybe he didn't want to be found. That's ridiculous, I said. Miles wouldn't do that. He glanced at me. People surprise you. The forensics team handed Keene a small plastic bag. Inside was a folded piece of paper. He looked at it for a long time before walking over. You should see this. He passed me the bag. The handwriting was unmistakably Miles's. Steady, sharp. 4 words written in black ink. Stop pretending it's a joke. My mouth went dry. That can't mean what it sounds like. Keene's tone stayed even. When did he write this? I don't know, I whispered. Maybe before the party. He leaves notes sometimes. Reminders, lists. This doesn't look like a list. I shook my head, blinking fast. He wouldn't just leave a message like that. Someone must have planted it. The detective said nothing. He didn't have to. The silence was enough. They finished collecting evidence, and we drove back to the station. I sat in a small room while they went over the timeline again. My voice grew smaller each time they asked the same questions. I dropped him off. I turned around. He was gone. Finally, Laird leaned forward. Mrs. Dane, we need to be clear. You're not under arrest. But until we verify his movements after that night, you're officially listed as a person of interest. I laughed, too loudly, too sharply. A person of interest? You think I killed him? No one's saying that, Keene said. But the inconsistencies in your story don't help. Inconsistencies? I repeated, incredulous. I misremembered a few minutes, that's all. You said you turned around within 5, Laird said. Your car's GPS shows a 23-minute gap. I froze. You checked my GPS? It's standard procedure. I looked down at the table, my heart hammering. I'd thought about that gap every night. I'd been angry, too angry, and the drive had stretched longer than it should have. Now it was proof of something darker. When they let me go home, the sun had already set. News vans were parked down the street. I walked fast to my door, ignoring the cameras flashing. My phone buzzed nonstop. Unknown numbers, reporters, people demanding answers. I turned it off and sank onto the couch. Hours later, someone knocked. When I opened the door, it was Martin, Miles's brother. He looked worn, eyes bloodshot, voice hard. "They found his car," he said flatly. "I know. And the note." I swallowed. "It's not what it looks like." His mouth tightened. "That's what people say right before it turns out to be exactly what it looks like. That's not fair, Martin." "No," he said quietly. "What wasn't fair was how you treated him. You made him small. You laughed when he tried to speak. Now he's gone, and you're still making excuses." Tears burned behind my eyes. "You don't understand what it was like." He shook his head. "I understand perfectly. He told me once he was scared you'd push him too far one day. I just didn't think he meant it literally." Before I could answer, he turned and walked away. That night, I opened the police evidence photo of the note again. Stop pretending it's a joke. I read it over and over, trying to hear his voice saying it. I imagined him sitting in the car, pen in hand, deciding to leave me one last message that wasn't quite a goodbye, but close. I told myself he must have written it in anger, that maybe he'd come back once he cooled off. But every version of the story ended the same way. Me alone, him gone. The next morning, I got a call from a lawyer. His tone was polite, professional. "Mrs. Dane, this is Mr. Langley. I've been retained by the Dane family to represent Miles's interests." "His interests?" I repeated. "Yes. We'll need to review your statement and financial records. It's standard in missing person cases." I almost laughed. "You think I took his money now?" "I didn't say that," he replied evenly. "But you should expect to be questioned again soon." When the call ended, I sat staring at the phone, my hands trembling. It felt like the walls were closing in. Police, family, lawyers, reporters, all circling tighter every hour. By evening, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I called Dylan. "Can I come over?" I asked. He hesitated. "Is that a good idea? With everything going on?" "I just need someone to talk to." He sighed. "All right, but don't expect me to fix this." When I hung up, I looked around the empty living room, the quiet, the untouched coffee mug, the neat line of shoes by the door. For the first time, I realized Miles hadn't taken anything with him. Not his jacket, not his keys, not even the old watch he wore every day. If he'd planned to leave, he'd done it with nothing but resolve. And if it wasn't planned, if something else had happened, then my joke had become the last thing he ever heard from me. The police called me in again 2 days later. By then, the air outside the house felt heavy, as though the whole town had turned against me. I arrived at the station wearing the same coat I'd worn the night of the drive, the one I hadn't washed because I couldn't bring myself to. Detective Laird met me at the door with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This shouldn't take long," he said, guiding me to the small room. The same chair, the same buzzing light, the same hollow in my stomach. He set a folder on the table. "We've reviewed additional surveillance footage." I folded my hands, pretending to be calm. "Okay." He opened the folder, flipping through photographs, frames of my car, headlights cutting through the dark. "You said you circled back within 10 minutes, he began. "But this footage from a toll camera shows you driving past the same stretch 3 times, between 12:18 and 1:02 a.m. I stared at the images. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "That doesn't mean anything. I got lost." He nodded slowly. "You've lived here your whole life, Mrs. Dane." "I was upset," I snapped. I wasn't thinking clearly. Keene entered then, coffee in hand. "We also spoke to a witness. A truck driver saw your vehicle parked on the shoulder around 1:15 a.m. He said your headlights were off." I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. "That's not true. I never—" Keene held up a hand. "Relax. We're not accusing you. We're clarifying." Laird leaned forward. "Why didn't you tell us about the extra time? Were you looking for him?" I hesitated. The silence stretched too long. "Yes," I said finally. "I was looking for him." Then why didn't you call for help until almost 2? I thought he'd come back, I said weakly. He always did. They exchanged a glance. I hated that look, the quiet, professional pity that meant they thought they already knew how the story ended. Mrs. Dane, Laird said, his tone gentler now. People online are making assumptions. If you have anything else to share, even something small, it could help clear your name. Clear my name. The phrase sounded absurd. I wanted to say I didn't need clearing, that I wasn't guilty of anything except bad timing and worse judgment. But the truth was, I didn't know what story they were building around me anymore. When I got home, reporters were waiting near the sidewalk, shouting questions. I kept my head down, fumbling with the keys. The door shut behind me like a seal breaking. I slid to the floor, back against the wall, breathing in short bursts. The phone rang again, unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Clara Dane? The voice was soft, unfamiliar. This is Officer Moretti with the Riverside Search Unit. We've recovered something near the riverbank about 10 miles east of where your husband was last seen. My throat went dry. What is it? He paused. His wallet. ID, cards, some cash still inside. My stomach twisted. Was there anything else? No. No sign of a struggle. We're continuing the search tomorrow. I thanked him mechanically and hung up. The room spun. Miles's wallet had been in his jacket that night. I remembered seeing it when he got out of the car. If it was by the river now, how far had he gone on foot? That night, I couldn't stop replaying everything. The party, the silence in the car, the moment his face disappeared in my rearview mirror, the sound of my own laughter, high and thoughtless. I kept thinking if I could just go back 5 minutes, maybe none of this would have happened. At some point, I must have fallen asleep on the couch because I woke to pounding on the door. It was Dylan. His face was pale, his voice tight. You need to stop talking to the press, he said. They're saying you're hiding something. I'm not hiding anything, I said. Then stop acting like you are. You're giving them a story. He walked into the living room and glanced around. Have the cops found him? I shook my head. He exhaled. Then you should get a lawyer. I didn't kill my husband, I said, louder than I meant to. I know, he said quickly, lowering his voice. But this looks bad. Everyone at work saw the news. HR's asking if you're coming back. I stared at him. They think I'm guilty too? He didn't answer. When he left, I stood in the doorway, watching his car drive away. The street was quiet except for the low hum of insects. I suddenly understood how alone I really was. Clara had stopped answering my calls, my mother-in-law refused to speak to me, and now even Dylan, who once claimed to believe in me, had started to keep his distance. Later, I turned on the TV. Nancy was on the local news again, holding a framed photo of Miles. Her voice cracked as she said, I just want my son home, and if anyone knows something, anything, they should come forward. The camera lingered on her face for a few seconds before cutting to a still photo of me, cropped from the wedding picture. My expression, smiling, confident, looked almost smug now. The anchor's voice said, Sources confirm investigators have labeled Clara Dane a person of interest as search efforts continue. I turned off the television. The silence afterward felt unbearable. Then my phone buzzed one last time before I set it down for the night. A new message from an unknown number. Stop pretending it's a joke. The same words from the note. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen, half expecting it to disappear. My fingers trembled as I typed, Who is this? No reply. Just that single sentence staring back at me, glowing in the dark. For the first time since it all began, I was no longer sure whether Miles was dead, missing, or watching me. The next morning, sunlight sliced through the blinds, but the house still felt dim. I hadn't slept. Every noise made me flinch, The pipes creaking, the hum of the fridge. I kept checking my phone, waiting for another message that never came. The words from last night still glowed in my mind. Stop pretending it's a joke. By mid-morning, I drove to the station again. I showed Sergeant Reeves the text, my hands shaking. "Someone's playing games," I said. "It came from an unknown number." He took the phone, scrolling carefully. "We'll trace it," he said. "But it could be an automated message, or someone trying to get a reaction." "Or it could be him," I said, voice breaking. "He could be alive." Reeves hesitated. "Mrs. Dane, we did get a new lead overnight." My heart jumped. "What kind of lead?" He gestured for me to sit. "A man came forward, says he picked someone matching your husband's description up near the highway that night. Dropped him at a train station around 1 a.m. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "So, he's alive." The officer's tone stayed measured. "The witness says the man was calm. Said he needed to get out of town, that he was done pretending. He didn't seem distressed." I leaned forward. "Did he give a name?" "He used the name Miller, not Dane. But the description matches. We've requested footage from the station." I sat back, numb. After all the searching, all the suspicion, he'd just walked away? My throat tightened. "He didn't even call." Reeves sighed. "If this is confirmed, he's not a missing person anymore. The case will close." The words sank in slowly. Not a missing person. Not a mystery. Just a man who'd decided to leave me behind. When I got home, Nancy's car was parked out front. I considered driving away, but she was already walking toward me, a folded paper in her hand. "He's alive, isn't he?" she asked, voice trembling. "I think so," I said quietly. She handed me the paper. "Then this belongs to you." I unfolded it, a copy of divorce papers. His name at the top, his signature scrawled at the bottom. Filed in another city, dated 3 days ago. My knees almost gave out. He doesn't want contact," she said. "He told the lawyer to handle everything." Tears blurred my vision. "Did he say anything else?" Nancy shook her head. "Just that he hopes you finally understand." I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but her expression told me there wouldn't be one. I went inside and shut the door. Hours passed in fragments. The phone rang with reporters, emails poured in, all asking for comment. I ignored every one of them. Around evening, the news played in the background without sound, footage from the train station, blurred but clear enough. Miles wearing his old jacket, head down, buying a ticket, alone. The headline read, "Husband of viral prank gone wrong, story found alive, files for divorce." The anchors spoke in calm voices, but all I heard was the echo of my own laughter from that night, the way I'd driven off, thinking I was clever. I turned the volume up just in time to hear the reporter say, "No criminal charges are being pursued. Police confirm this was a domestic incident that escalated beyond repair." Beyond repair. That was all our marriage had become, a cautionary segment between commercials. I sat on the floor, staring at the screen until the colors blurred. Outside, neighbors stood on their lawns, pretending not to look at my windows. I pulled the curtains shut. My mother called soon after, voice trembling. "At least he's alive," she said. "Alive," I repeated. The word didn't comfort me. It felt like a verdict. She tried to sound hopeful. "You can move on now." "Move on from what?" I asked. "From being the woman who turned her husband into a headline?" She didn't answer. After I hung up, I opened the fridge, saw the uneaten leftovers from days ago, and shut it again. I poured a glass of water and sat by the window. The evening light had gone soft, orange, fading into gray. Somewhere out there, he was living quietly, far from all of this. Probably happier, definitely freer. I wanted to hate him for leaving, but mostly I hated myself for giving him every reason to. I thought of every time I'd rolled my eyes, Every cruel joke I'd defended as just teasing, every moment he'd swallowed his words to avoid another argument. I thought about that night on the road, the look on his face before I hit the gas. He'd already decided then. The prank had just given him permission. The news played again later, looping the same footage. This time I didn't look away. They showed me too, crying outside the station, my voice shaking as I said, "It was just supposed to be funny." The caption read, "Wife speaks after husband's disappearance. It was a misunderstanding." I muted it and whispered, "It wasn't." Near midnight, I stepped outside. The air smelled of rain. The street was quiet now, empty. I stood by my car, the same one from that night, still faintly stained with dust from the roadside. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar. Older, smaller, stripped of every excuse. I imagined him boarding that train, sitting by the window as the countryside slid past. Maybe he'd smiled once, feeling the weight of everything finally fall away. Inside the house, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. "Don't make this a story, Clara. Let it end." I didn't reply. I deleted it, then turned off my phone for good. In the silence, I finally understood. His revenge had never been about punishment. It was about peace. The kind of peace I'd never given him, and never learned to give myself. I stood there a long time, the wind rising, the road stretching out before me. The same road I'd once thought was harmless. The same road that had taken him away and left me exactly where I belonged, alone, with no one left to laugh at the joke. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching,